Welcome, everyone, to the Unfiltered Podcast. My name is Lee Stephenson. I get to oversee church planting for Converge and then a local church planter here in Orlando, Florida.
I'm Danny Parmelee, and I oversee church planting for Converge Mid-America.
And today in our conversation, we're going to talk a little bit about the unique changes that take place as a leader when you plant a church. So, meaning you're probably going to lead differently year one in your church plant than maybe you do in year 5 as a church planter and pastor at that stage. I know for me, totally happened. My guess is, Danny, you probably experienced the same kind of changes.
Yeah, and I would say some of the stuff that I'll share today is truly is kind of learning from mistakes, or it's learning only in hindsight, in comparison to, hey, this is what I did, and someone gave me some really good, training or information, and so I did it, and I saw how well it worked.
Great. Well, please share.
Okay, so here's my 2 things in comparison of leading year 1 to year 5, and this is something that I often share with church planners, is that in the beginning, the key word is yes. So it is saying yes to everything, and here's why I say that this was somewhat of a mistake, is that I read leadership books, and everything about leadership books was, do only the things that you're good at, say no, and you need to protect your time and boundaries and yada, yada, yada. So I kind of operated a little bit like that, but then kind of quickly understood, like, I need to meet people and network. So it was saying yes to everything. Like, hey, will you come to my, church and preach? Will you come to my, banquet? Will you do a funeral for my aunt's dead hamster? Yes. Those are, I've shared that before on the pod, just saying yes to everything. Just so that I could make connections, that I could network and those types of things. Now, in comparison, then once you begin to grow, so you're saying yes to everything, but then once your plate is completely full, you literally can't add anything more to it. That's then when you begin to start being choosy. But I feel like we have these leadership principles, and we tell planters, like, say no to things, and all they're doing is sitting at home, twiddling their thumbs, checking their social media accounts to see if they're getting more, likes type of thing. It's like, no, you got to be out there, meeting with people. So it's yes, 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 yes. And then as you continue to grow, then your keyword is going to switch to no, so that you're only saying yes to the things that, only you can do, type of thing. And then the other thing deals kind of with the empowerment. So again, you read leadership books and everything is like, just give stuff away, entrust people with responsibility. And I think that as a church planner, that can bite you in the butt. And so to make a point, I'm going to exaggerate and to say you've got to be a dictator in the beginning, and then later is when you empower. Now, again, this is a total exaggeration, but it's just meaning that your hands have to be so tight on things, and you can even give the impression of empowerment, but you better have an eyeball on every nickel that comes in and out of that church, every decision that's made, the social media accounts, even if you're hiring someone, or it's one of your volunteers. I mean, you just need to have hands on everything to protect, because there's just too many crazy people out there that want to intentionally or unintentionally sabotage the vision, the culture, the direction, everything about the church. And you just need some time to be able to protect that, build that. And then as you move along, eventually you're going to get to that point where you are entrusting and you're like, oh, no, you are running the small groups ministry. So if that's the curriculum, that's the direction, that's the new rule, then I, maybe I'll still give input, but I really want to entrust you and empower and not make your volunteers or staff feel like they've got to, ask permission for every single thing that they do. So those are my 2 as far as kind of just shifts, which, takes a little bit of balancing and learning. You won't do it perfect, but just as a mentality in the back of my mind. So
were you not a strong enough dictator in the early days of your church plant that you wish you were?
No, the one thing is, so I was maybe partly by natural bent, and I am a high D on the disc, but I literally, so my coach slash mentor was Tom Niebel. And I remember a specific time when he was coaching me and I said, "Hey, I'm getting pushback on this and this." And I do remember his exact words. He said, I used to have that same thing. And then people started to ask me, "Are you some sort of dictator?" And then Tom, I remember him pausing and then he said, and my response was, "Yes." And he might not have ever really said that and had that conversation, but it was enough in me to go, okay, it is okay to be a bit micromanager, heavy-handed, dictator, whatever you want to call it in the beginning to just protect that vision. So it was a word from him that I believe that God spoke through him just to at least, to hang on as much as I could to stuff until
They
people
were
had
ready.
proved, till they were ready, until organizationally we had enough momentum and culture behind it besides just everything being open-ended.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that like I've wrestled with even in my own journey of leadership, and I think I see it prevalent as you grow older as a leader and stuff, is how do you guard yourself from becoming more cynical? Because I think like year 1 versus year 10 of
Mhm,
pastoral leadership, I definitely became more cynical
mhm.
during that time period. Would you say that you wrestle with a similar type of bent, Danny, when it came to leading and planting?
Well,
And
tell
if
me what you
so, how,
t tell me what you mean by it. So when you say cynical, what do you mean? Cynical about people or just
about people and
oh,
follow through, and and that can become a negative
yeah,
response to becoming a
yeah.
dictator. Is like, well, if they're just not going to be able to do it the way that I can do it, and so I'm just going to do it anyways.
That hasn't changed for me. I've always been cynical, so
Well, I
so
appreciate your honesty, man.
it's unfiltered. You said it's unfiltered. No, man, I don't know, but in seriousness, I don't know if that's necessarily changed or grew. Uh, Man, that's a harder one, but you seem to have it, so I want you to say something about it
Well,
that
I
and I think you're a perfect example. So here's what I have the blessing. I planted a church one time, and I've already said that like you're naive if you plant a church once, you're certifiably crazy if you plant one twice or three times. So that's the category, the box that I'm putting you in here
that's
today.
fine. That's
Um,
totally fine.
but so with that, and maybe the way to help draw this out, what did you do the second time that you planted that you said, you know what, the first time I made this mistake, but then I'm curious if there's any of those things that it still didn't matter. And you're like, actually, the way that I did it before and it kind of didn't work is actually what made it work. I don't know if that philosophically kind of makes sense, but when you plant a second time, you're clearly running everything through the lens of your previous experience.
Yeah, you are, and I would say, it's interesting when I look at them differently. The first church plan I did, I was 30.
Hmm.
The second church plan I did, I was 40. You just see life differently, and so some of it is it because of an age thing and maturity, or is it literally like, I think it's a hard question to answer. I would When I look back at the first church plant, year 1 of church leadership, um, I think I was more eager, more
Hmm.
energetic, probably even a little bit more creative. But I would say probably a lot of the creativity probably was stupid
Hmm.
creativity. Like it was
Yeah.
just like, oh, why don't we try this? Thinking, hey, we're going to be the first one to prove Solomon wrong that there is something new under the sun. So um,
How'd that work out for you?
it didn't work out really well. But I think, round 2, and again, maybe it's just an age maturity thing. Maybe it is a lack of energy. You sit there and go, I've seen enough now. That's just not going to work.
Yeah.
Um, and so you're maybe a little bit more methodical. I
Hmm.
wouldn't call it
Yeah.
slower, but you're you're more tuned in to where you're going to spend your time, where you're going to spend your energy, where you're going to spend
Mhm.
your resources. I mean,
Yeah.
both church resources, but even personal resources.
Yeah.
How am I going to use my relational time? And it was different. First time I was full-time church planner from day one. Second church plant, I've got a full-time job. So I just don't have the time or the
Mhm.
cushion to be able to put into certain things the way that I probably would if I was full-time.
Mhm.
And that I've had to dial back my expectation. Like there are certain changes that when you're a full-time church planter, you can kind of
Mhm.
guarantee and get it moving fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Now I have to work through other people to inspire and engage and create that change or that momentum. It takes longer. In the long road, I think it will be better. I think we'll be a healthier entity, but it takes longer to create the change and the opportunity that maybe I see going, man, I wish we were just
Mhm.
here. But because of not being a full time capacity, it's just the reality is I just can't get it done.
Yeah. And you what you're speaking to, or what you said, is something that I've, of course, been pondering it as well. And that is that there is even though I joked about using the word naive, there I remember planting and being naive to just so many different things, even though I didn't think I was naive at the time. I just thought, this
Oh
is
no,
this
you
is
think you're
great. I
brilliant when
think
you
you're
come up with those
brilliant.
ideas.
But I'm wondering if that actually is what has fueled the ingenuity and why it actually worked. Like, we did not know what we were doing, and there was less about church planting and networks and manuals and stuff. So we were kind of just making it up as we went along. But because of that, there was a certain amount of enthusiasm, energy, authenticity, dependence on God. Whereas if I were to plant the second time around, I feel like I would be in the same spot that you are, where it's like, okay, I'm not going to try this, or I'm going to take even a little bit of the less risky road, or we tried that didn't work. Do you know what I mean? And so in some
100%.
ways, so it's interesting because even right now, one of the church, planters that I'm coaching, I see different things, and I'm like, so much of me wants to step in and say, you know what, that's not going to work, and don't do this, and here's what you need to do. Like, just follow the playbook. And I have literally coached myself to say, you know what, don't say anything. Let them do it. This is the only way that will, as a church, big C church across the world, and specifically to the United States, be able to try new things and to continue to push the envelope. I don't want to create a cookie cutter church that is just actually probably 5 to just 10 years behind
Exactly.
culture, type of thing. And so I don't know. Maybe some of the listeners here are those that are just on the front end of things, and they're trying to learn absolutely everything they can so they don't make mistakes. And maybe our word to them is say, like, no, it's okay. Try things, be yourself, break the mold, push back on your coach a little bit, unless it's Lee or Danny. Um, and then for those going a second time, that maybe they do need to say, hey, how do you recapture some of that spirit of just going for it, and not weigh everything through the lens of risk aversity?
I agree. I think we've got to, and now let's address our coaches that may be listening.
Yeah.
You've got to release the younger guys to be innovative. Allow them to try things. Half of it may fail, more than half of it may fail, but there may be just a golden nugget hidden there
Mhm.
that could actually be something that's hugely inspirational to multiple churches, multiple leaders within the life of the church.
Yeah.
But we will never find it if we put the kibosh on those things. And so, year one, yeah, I think I was probably much more innovative, but I had the time and the energy to be so. By year five, the demands have grown. Um, and I mean, we were no longer a small church. And so the interaction and those type of things, but I could see it in myself. So I began to even budget time just to be creative,
Mhm.
putting it in my schedule. And I still have to do the same thing even today, where I literally will blot out different moments in my calendar to make sure that I'm giving myself space to think out of the box and put myself in scenarios that challenge me to think differently than the way necessarily I would just script it.
Right. Yeah, and I think that there was something too, and in the beginning, I was willing to take the risk, even though, yes, I feared failure, and I think most church planters do. Like at the heart of hearts, that was the biggest fear, is fear of failure. But when you're starting out and you're young, it mattered less. Like if we would have pooped out and failed, it wasn't that big of a deal. But if you planted a successful church and then you failed on the next one, or you failed after you've grown something really, really large, it just has a different feel to it. So I think like the younger you are, and if it's your first one and you don't know what you're doing, if you try a whole bunch of things and you fail, it just seems less. So there's more of that motivation to just go for it. And I've been thinking this, of course, there's the rise and fall of Mars Hill. It's a podcast that is has a few more downloads than our podcast
Just
does.
just a couple, just a
So,
couple.
but anyways, thinking through, especially the first couple ones where they were talking about the different phases of like the boomer church, and then you have the Gen X church, and then I'm asking and wondering what is going to be the reactionary thing to what we have right now, and just like trying to also maybe some of the planters that right now I'm even disappointed in, they might have it. They might be trying to do the very thing that is going to reshape whatever church looks like for that next generation, just like everyone was looking at Mark and Mars Hill going, this is never going to work. This is like totally wrong. It's not, that's not what people want, type of thing. So anyways, that it will be curious to see this next generation of, young leaders to be able to take things to a new place.
Yeah, I agree, and it's going to be exciting. I am super excited to see long term what we see birth in the creativity that hopefully and prayerfully will continue to move the church forward. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. It's been a fun conversation, and we're trying to be creative, but we're keeping it real. So until next time, you keep it real as well. We'll see you.